is Aloha Authentic.
Aloha mai and welcome to another episode of Aloha Authentic with yours truly, Mr. Kamakapili, and I am still Kamakapili. Today we have a very special guest and very fortunate for me because I love to listen to stories and this guy just loves to tell about stories, so it's a perfect match. But today we have in the studio Uncle Walter Kawaiʻaeʻa. Thank you very much, Uncle, for participating. I really appreciate it. But before we get into the whole talking story sesh, I always forget about this every single time, so I want to make sure I give it a point to explain. But there is a bowl of poi on the table and some poke on the side and some pupus. The whole point of it, and kalamai if it becomes a little distraction, but the whole point of bringing a poi is I wanted to bring out the whole moʻolelo that I was growing up, that when you have a bowl of poi on the table, anything that is discussed when the bowl of poi is open is always about positivity, is always about good mana and good energy. You never want to have an open bowl of poi on the table and you're talking about pilikia and you're talking all this negative energy, because all that energy that you push out is going to get sucked right into the poi and it's going to spoil and your food going to taste bad. So the good mana and the good stuff and energy that you share will also, again, go into the poi and make it very ono for you and you know, continue. So that's the whole mo'olelo. So kalamai, if it's a little distraction, but it's the whole point that we're going to be talking about positive stuff today. So coming from that and jumping straight to Uncle, first of all, so to share a little bit with you about, with you all, with what Uncle comes from in the sense of arts, is he's a very deep in Hawaiian music. So with that being said, Uncle, can you share just a little bit about where you come from in the terms of music?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for, you know, inviting me to this session. And
we never eat lunch yet, so this thing might be gone by the
we're
time
very
Paul.
hungry, so you know how that goes with Hawaiians. My introduction to music started, I attended a private school, St. Louis High School, and for some of you that are listening to the program, know Kumu, John Lake, who is no longer with us, was teaching Spanish up at St. Louis High School in the mid-'60s when I entered as a freshman. And I remember in my my sophomore year, towards the second half of the school year, there was a call out to students that wanted to learn Hawaiian music and learn to dance hula. And that he was inviting his cousin, the famed Kahauanu Lake of the Kahauanu Lake Trio. Well, when I heard that, my ears just perked up. And I thought, I gotta go. And one of my classmates, George Helm, he and I were really close during our school years. And so we both went out. Now here's the interesting thing. Kahauanu Lake evidently instructed his cousin that any of the students that wanted to attend had to be accompanied by one of their parents, because this was going to be after school, you know, in the evening. And so I was all excited. The short of it was there were about 11 or 12 of us guys that came out, and we all had our parents. And I was very familiar with the Lake Trio's music. I mean, they were at the top of the heap, you know. They were part of the golden era of Hawaiian music, as we like to refer to it as. Anyway, we don't have 3 hours, so I'm going to condense the storyline. But in the end, Uncle selected two of us to work with. You know, we put on the May Day program that year. All of us participated. But when our sophomore year was through, Kahauanu Lake came up to me and said, because I never played an instrument, he came up to me and said, I'm going to teach you how to play ukulele. And my mother was standing right there. And you sent him to my house. And that was it. And in those days in school, you know, summer was summer, right? You had 3 months off. Well, the short of it was I spent every day, 7 days a week, at his home in Kahala with his future wife, the renowned kumuhula, Auntie Maiki. And so every day, session started at 8 o'clock in the morning, prompt. And it went till midnight, sometimes past the midnight hour. Oh yeah. He cooked for me She cooked. I mean, it was such a learning experience in terms of, and that's why we have poi and fish, because, you know, Hawaiian music, this is perfect. I've been teaching music now, ukulele and Hawaiian music, carrying on his legacy and his style for the last 11, 12 years. And we have it in a home. There's food. It just accompanies Hawaiian music well. And so my introduction to Hawaiian music that summer of 1966, I cannot explain how important this notion or this business of mentorship, because that in actuality is what was happening to me. I was only 15 years old. And you know, my sessions were, he was trying to teach me how to play ukulele, but he was introducing me to that, to music, I mean, just everything, the culture. He was very schooled, he was very knowledgeable in Hawaiian history. I remember when he, now I always knew that Uncle K played left-handed, this way, but he's right-handed. I always knew that, but when he said, all right, grab your ukulele, and I looked at him, everything was backwards. And everything was upside down. And you know, I was only 15. I'm not going to raise my hand and say, could you, you know, it's backwards. And so I just went along with it. And he moved at a fast pace, and I had to, so when he held a G7th chord, for example, it was upside down. And I had to figure it up, right side up for me. And so it was very interesting. But you know, when you're young, you know, my age now, I'm 64, I would raise my hand and say, time out, what was that again? But at age 15, you just go with the flow. And you know, if we got through at 9, 10 o'clock at night, I would go home. Well, here's the deal. Step back. No tape recording, no writing of anything. Just pay attention was the instruction. That was it. So after all day and late into the night, when it was done and I went home, I would stay up for several hours and try to write down as much as I could remember. And I did this every day for 3 months. And that was my introduction to Hawaiian music. That was my introduction to Kahauanu Lake. And I spent the rest, you know, the rest of my life pretty much until Uncle passed away almost 4 or 5 years ago. And
so how come? So you had the option for hula. How come you never choose hula?
well, I did. I danced, not by choice, by, as they say, by hook or by crook. At the time, the Lake Trio was playing at the Kaimana Beach Hotel. And he wanted to start on a Thursday night a show. He wanted to put on a show, and he wanted to have the young people, the youth. So he called on Auntie Mikey, and he made George, myself, and the other fellow that played in the trio, he made the three of us go to the halau and learn, learn routines of hula. And so that, you know, that was about as much as I was allowed by the gods of hula to perform hula, you know, during that time at the Kaimana Beach Hotel. So that would have been in the, oh, let's see, when was that? I graduated in 68, so this probably would have been 69, 70, 71, around that time.
So these behind you, you brought some of your ukuleles. Tell us, I mean, I could just feel the mana, and I know I recognize one of them from albums and such, but share a little bit about what you've brought and what they are.
I see, you know, that the audience can see this, but there's 3 ukulele here. They're all kamaka made.
Thank you.
This is, yeah, kamaka ukulele made. And these ukuleles all were made by K.C. Young, who at the time, this would have been in the 60s and going into the early 70s, he was the premier ukulele maker at Kamaka Ukulele. And The Kamaka brothers, Fred and Sam, presented each of these ukuleles over a period of, I don't know, maybe 10 years to Uncle K. The first ukulele he gave him actually sits right there in the middle. And, you know, it's really a tenor ukulele. I like to call it a baby baritone, but it's a tenor ukulele. And you have to understand, Uncle K had he had big hands. And so as much as that actually has a nice sound, he never played it. It was too small for him. So they made this ukulele, because if you take a look at the one in the middle and this one, they're identical in terms of the construction, the wood, the choice of wood. But this one is the monster. Okay. And then that one recessed in the back there with Uncle's name on it is the ukulele that he played for the 18 years that they were at the surf room at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. And it has his name on it, and that ukulele is just, I should probably grab it and strike a little tune on that.
If you can. But also, we'll make sure that we end this episode a little bit earlier, so then that way we can put an audio clip on top and they can hear a little.
Okay, I'm gonna get off this chair without hurting myself and grab that ukulele. Sorry for the downtime, but this is the ukulele that I've been using in my teaching classes, just because, you know, in Hawaiian tradition, when I carry this with me, I feel like Uncle's with me. And my students are well aware of the music and everything, so let me take this guy off. Anyway, this ukulele is just, you know, there's mana. Talk about mana.
Yeah.
This ukulele, as I said, Uncle K, this is the ukulele of choice that he used for the 17 years that he played at the surf room at the Royal, where the trio ended their career in, I believe it was 1988. And so...
And what does it mean to you to have it?
Well, I'll tell you, like I mentioned earlier, I've been teaching Hawaiian music and ukulele classes to adults here on Oahu and on Maui for the last 12 years. I always felt uncomfortable going into that 12 years ago with having the ability to arrange, taking traditional Hawaiian music or hapahaole music and arranging it. Something happened. Every time, you know, when I started to play this ukulele, I remember the day he called and he said, are you busy? Well, it almost doesn't matter. If I told him I was busy, he said, well, he would say, cancel it, come to my office. So I did. And when I got to his office, he was out on 10th Avenue, closed the door, we pule, and then he pulled 2 ukulele cases. And when he pulled it, I knew already what was about to happen. And there was a part of me that was excited. And so what he did was this ukulele, and this one right there, or this guy right here, he gave to me. And, you know, years later when I spoke to several kumuhula, Alicia Smith in particular said, when I shared with her what happened that day, and I quickly realized, and I turned to Uncle and I says, but what ukulele are you going to play? And it was his response to me that saddened my heart. And his response was, I'm not going to play anymore. And there was silence in the room, I mean, my eyes welled up in tears in that moment because I thought to myself, after almost being with him for 45 years, I was no longer going to hear him live. And so that, as much as I was excited to inherit the instruments, I was sad to know that I would never see or hear him play again. And I remember Alicia Smith, like I said, years later, we were having a conversation, phone conversation one night, and I shared that mana'o with her. And I could hear, I could feel, tears coming down her cheeks on the other end. And I said, "Are you okay, Auntie?" She says, "Oh," because she was close to Uncle, and Uncle was close to her. And she said, "That was your uniki." And so for anyone out there that's listening, that's the Hawaiian terminology for graduation. And I never thought of it in that light, but that was Uncle's way. He was a man of few words. He just passed the instruments to me. And so from that moment when Alicia shared that with me, the kuleana pot got raised. Then I realized that now I have responsibility. So I took what I was doing, not that I wasn't, but I took it a lot more serious. One of the things that I told Kamaka before we started this show, that for me, fame and glory and fortune was never my interest at age 15. I just knew that I had the opportunity to learn from a master practitioner in music, in this case, Kahauanu Lake. And I was all ears and I was all in full throttle attention. And I stayed in that mode for over 40 years. And I'm grateful today because when I hold this instrument, if somebody gave me a song right now, I could play it in the K-Lake style. And so I realized that was my kuleana. I wasn't looking to become the next, Alfred Apaka. I wasn't looking to become famous. I just wanted to be able to carry on his musical legacy. And so this is what I've been doing ever since, and having fun with it. When I think about having adult students for the last 12 years, and we've gone through some, the country has gone through some tough economic times. And when I think of the fact that not one of them, I have 70 adult students, not one of them in the last 12 years have left class. As the years I went, 5 years, I told my wife, this is crazy. 10 years, this is insane, And I realized that this is what I was destined to carry on Kahauanu Lake and the trio's legacy, their musical legacy. And so these ukuleles, they're symbolic, they make great music, but my good friend at Kamaka Ukulele, Chris Kamaka, some of you know him, when I took this down, Chris's caution to me was, I think this, maybe just leave at home. And so I don't play this instrument as much now. I take one of these two, which are more primed in condition for me to carry around and play with. This has now just become symbolic of Kahauanu Lake and that trio's music, and so always grateful for that.
How do you see Hawaiian music, traditional Hawaiian music, change throughout the time that you've been doing it? From today, how is music today?
Well, I mean, the difference is from when I was, growing up, and from when you're growing up, I mean, that's the difference we're talking about. The things that go on around the world, then and now and into the future, to some degree, determines and dictates and will affect and has affected different aspects of the Hawaiian culture. And some may disagree with that, but I believe it's a conclusion I've come to because our lives are affected and our families' lives are affected by what goes on around us. And like it or not, unless you have control of those elements, it's going to have an impact on you personally, your family, and not necessarily in a bad way, but we all have to make adjustments. we hope that the adjustment doesn't exit out the practices or the things that we have been doing up to this point with regards to the culture. What I have seen grown, you know, because during my time, everything, the focal point was music and hula. Everything was music and hula. And, you know, in terms of, we will define them as Hawaiian professions. But what has happened over the last 40, almost 50 years is other aspects or other Hawaiian professions like lapa'au, they've come to the forefront. And in fact, you know, or navigation, they've all come to the forefront. And what that does or has done in the last 35 plus years, it's given your generation, Kamaka, options other than hula and music. I mean, be realistic. Not everybody wants to dance hula. Not every Hawaiian wants to play music. But when you give them other options or other Hawaiian professions like lapa'au, like navigation, and right down the line, or, you know, feather lei making, or lauhala weaving, et cetera, or taking care of the lo'i, the kalo. You know, all of those things now, we can have major conversations because it's actually happening. Masters, before they passed away, like Papa Awai, made sure he passed it on. And not just to one, but, you know, many students who have continued in that likeness. Even the likes of Lavan Ohai from Kauai. And so, you know, they're all gone now. So the kuleana for me is more about passing it on. And now that I'm getting up in years, I have to find somebody. You know, people, you know, associates and friends of mine say, well, what about your children? My response is, what about them? You know, it's the kind of thing where you don't force it upon somebody.
No.
You know, and I know you know what I'm talking about, and I know many of you listening out there know what I'm talking about. I haven't found that person yet, but I'm very hopeful, you know, that it's right around the corner. And I have to, you know, without making it a point to look every day, but, you know, figuratively speaking, I have to look.
Yeah.
And when I'm looking in that way, then I'll find, you know.
So understanding your kuleana and what you have to do in terms of responsibility, what messages in the context of aloha and the whole messages of the aloha spirit and what Hawaiians really are about and passing from one generation to the next, what do you get from music? What do you think Hawaiian music, traditional Hawaiian music, has to offer in the terms of aloha?
It's a great question, and you know, to try to sum that up, I mean, you know, it's like a college course, you know, that takes.
We're taking a test after this, so you better take notes.
You guys taking a test? You guys said that. I'll tell you, you know, when I teach, part of the methodology of teaching is introducing the song to the students. I have my music partner on Maui, and I came up about 7 years ago with a new way to musically chart music, because 98% of the people on this planet are not musically trained. So in other words, they're not schooled so that they can read scored music. So she and I came up with another way as a musical tool for me to teach. For me, the aloha it was more, as much as this has been good to me, and I've learned to play like him, it was never about the instrument. It's always about the olelo. It's always about the music. So for example, you know, if it's Auntie Maddie Lamb's He Aloha Ku'ipo, yeah? He Aloha Ku'ipo Kuhoapi. You know, we're talking about my beloved companion, my beloved sweetheart, yeah? And so for me, in the classroom with the students, we get into the translation. Now, you know, I'm fairly good friends with Puakia Nogomeyer, and the reality is, you don't really know. You can take a good guess, unless you got it from the composer's mouth, what the literal translation, or the figurative, you know, what was this all about? And so I learned a lot of that through Uncle K, because he played. It was during his time that these masters were alive. So he, like Kavena and Maddie, et cetera, et cetera. So he had the opportunity to learn firsthand. George and myself, and then the third member of the trio back in school was Auntie Mikey's half-brother's son, who was attending Farrington High School. His name was Wayne Reese. Fantastic musician. And Wayne's mother was a daughter of Alvin Isaac Sr. I mean, it's crazy. I have memories, and I know I'm kind of veering off, but I have memories of George and Wayne and I practicing on the front porch of Uncle Alvin Isaac's home in Kalihi. And we would be practicing. And then and then all of a sudden you hear this voice from the living room, somebody played the wrong chord. And I'm like, oh gosh, are they all like Kahauanu Lake? He would say the same thing. I remember performing, live at someone's party, and Uncle would come up right to the corner of the stage, and just while I'm playing live, tell me, you guys didn't play the F sharp diminished over there. And I'm like, oh, could you save that for after? But no, this is how the masters behaved. You get it right on the spot, live, so you remember, you don't forget. So it's kind of the way of how, you're not offending anybody. You want to learn, just like you're going to learn. Live, The canoe is sinking. What are we going to do? Wait till next week to, not sink it? Okay, we're going to do something right now. And, we could go on, and I'm looking at the clock, and I know time is running out, and so thank you very much. Aloha is very much a part of what I do. That's why I love doing what I do, and I'll continue to do this till it's my time to go.
Yeah. Well, before the clock really does get out of time and we get cut off, I just want to give a big mahalo. Thank you very much, Uncle. I know we can go on and on and on. We probably will be after this, but for a message that be able to share with you, thank you to you all to participating in watching and listening to what Uncle has to say, because it's only, I always go back to it's a kako thing. We can be able to share as much as we can, but are you willing to receive and turn around and share too? Because it's all our responsibility to pass on the aloha. So before we go out, I also wanted to make a really fast shout out. Earlier we came out from the protest from Mauna Kea. So all out there, I just want to give my deepest aloha to everybody standing up and standing strong for the whole telescope issue with Mauna Kea, and all those who are standing in what they really believe in and what our responsibility as Hawaiians is. That being said, and the time is going out, mahalo to everybody. Again, mahalo, Uncle. And next time, no worry. I'll bring the poi. It's coming with me. So hui ho, guys. Aloha.
Aloha.
See the spirit of aloha through the arch with aloha.